The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, trapping Marine veteran Jessica Torres with two drunk men who thought they had found easy prey. 15 seconds later, hotel security found both attackers unconscious on the floor while Jessica calmly fixed her hair in the mirrored wall. What happens when predators pick the wrong victim? This is the story of a business trip that became a lesson in why you should never underestimate a woman who survived 3 tours in combat zones. Staff Sergeant Jessica Torres adjusted her navy blue blazer as she walked through the lobby of the Marriott downtown Denver. At 32 years old, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from 8 years as a Marine Corps military police officer and 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan. The business conference had run longer than expected, and Jessica was exhausted from a full day of presentations about veteran employment programs. Her company had sent her to represent their diversity initiatives, and she'd spent 8 hours explaining why hiring veterans made good business sense. Now, at 11:30 p.m., she just wanted to reach her room on the 14th floor, order room service, and prepare for tomorrow's early flight back to Phoenix. The hotel bar was still busy despite the late hour. Through the glass doors, Jessica could see clusters of conference attendees continuing conversations over expensive drinks. She had declined several invitations to join various groups, preferring to maintain professional boundaries. She waited for the elevator. Jessica noticed 2 men approaching from the bar area. Both appeared to be in their 40s, wearing rumpled suits that suggested they'd been drinking for several hours. Their unsteady gait and loud conversation confirmed her assessment. "Look what we have here," the taller man said to his companion, his words slightly slurred. "Pretty lady all by herself." Jessica recognized the type immediately. Aggressive alpha males who used alcohol as an excuse for inappropriate behavior. She dealt with similar personalities during her military service, usually by establishing clear boundaries and walking away when possible. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and Jessica stepped inside, hoping the men would choose a different car. Instead, they followed her into the small space, positioning themselves between her and the door. "Which floor, sweetheart?" the shorter man asked, reaching toward the button panel in a way that brought him uncomfortably close to Jessica's personal space. 14, Jessica replied curtly, pressing the button herself and stepping back toward the elevator's rear wall. The taller man, who introduced himself as Dave from some pharmaceutical company, pressed the button for the 15th floor. His companion, Mike, claimed to work in medical device sales. Both seemed to think their professional credentials gave them permission to engage her in unwanted conversation. "You know," Dave said as the elevator began its ascent, "we were just talking about how boring this conference has been. Maybe you'd like to join us for a nightcap? We've got a suite with a great view." "No, thank you," Jessica replied firmly. "I have an early flight tomorrow." The elevator felt smaller with each passing floor. Jessica's military training automatically cataloged potential threats and escape routes. 2 intoxicated males, both larger than her 5'6" frame. Enclosed space with limited options for movement. Emergency alarm button within reach if necessary. "Come on," Mike pressed, moving closer. "Don't be antisocial. We're all adults here." Jessica's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Her weight moved to the balls of her feet. Her hands relaxed at her sides in a position that would allow quick defensive movements. Years of combat training had taught her to recognize when a situation was escalating beyond verbal harassment. "I said no," she repeated, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she'd used to command. Marines in hostile territory. Dave laughed and exchanged a look with Mike that Jessica didn't like. Feisty. I liked that in a woman. The elevator passed the 10th floor, then the 11th. Jessica calculated that she had less than 30 seconds before reaching her destination. She hoped the men would simply exit on the 15th floor and end this uncomfortable encounter. Instead, Dave reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Look, honey," he said, his breath reeking of whiskey. "We're just trying to be friendly. No need to be such a bitch about it." That's when Jessica's Marine Corps training took over. Her left hand shot up and grabbed Dave's wrist, applying pressure to nerve points that would cause immediate pain and temporary paralysis. Her right elbow drove into his solar plexus with enough force to double him over and empty his lungs. Mike, startled by his friend's sudden distress, reached toward Jessica with both hands. She pivoted on her left foot and delivered a precise knee strike to his groin, followed by an upward palm strike to his nose that sent him staggering backward into the elevator wall. Dave tried to straighten up, but Jessica maintained her grip on his wrist while sweeping his legs with her right foot. He crashed to the elevator floor as the car reached the 14th floor. Mike, blood streaming from his broken nose, made one more attempt to grab her. Jessica sidestepped his clumsy lunge and applied a sleeper hold that cut off blood flow to his brain. He collapsed beside his companion just as the elevator doors opened. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 15 seconds. Jessica stepped over the unconscious man and walked calmly to her room, using her key card to enter while the elevator doors closed automatically behind her. She immediately called hotel security to report the incident, then sat on the bed to process what had just happened. Her hands weren't shaking. Her heart rate had already returned to normal. The physiological responses that might overwhelm a civilian were completely manageable for someone with her background. Within minutes, hotel security arrived at her room to take a statement. The head of security, a former police officer named Martinez, reviewed the elevator's security footage on his tablet. "Ma'am, I have to say, that was the most efficient self-defense I've ever witnessed," Martinez told her. "Those men are currently being treated by paramedics, but they'll both survive, with no permanent damage. I used appropriate force to stop the threat," Jessica replied. "Nothing more, nothing less." Martinez nodded approvingly. "Can you tell me about your background?" "That wasn't civilian self-defense training." Jessica showed him her military ID card. "Staff Sergeant Jessica Torres, United States Marine Corps, military police, recently separated from active duty." "That explains it," Martinez said. "We've had problems with these particular guests before. Multiple complaints from female conference attendees about inappropriate behavior. Tonight they picked the wrong target." The police arrived 20 minutes later to take official statements and arrest Dave and Mike for assault and attempted sexual assault. Detective Sarah Williams, who specialized in crimes against women, interviewed Jessica in her hotel room. "Ms. Torres, the security footage clearly shows these men initiated unwanted physical contact," Detective Williams explained. "Your response was textbook self-defense. They'll be charged with assault, and given their blood alcohol levels and history of similar complaints, they'll likely face serious consequences." Jessica learned that both men had been involved in previous incidents at business conferences. Dave had been accused of sexual harassment at his own company, but avoided consequences through legal settlements. Mike had a restraining order filed against him by an ex-girlfriend. "You may have prevented these men from attacking other women," Detective Williams continued. "Predators like this usually escalate their behavior until someone stops them." The next morning, Jessica's story had spread throughout the conference. Other female attendees approached her to share their own experiences with the two men. Unwanted advances, inappropriate comments, and aggressive behavior that had made them uncomfortable. "I wish I'd had your training," said Maria Rodriguez, AHR director from Texas. "Dave cornered me at the bar yesterday and wouldn't take no for an answer. I had to ask the bartender to intervene." Jessica realized that her military background had given her advantages most women didn't possess. The confidence to set clear boundaries, the physical skills to defend herself, and the emotional control to use precisely the amount of force necessary to stop a threat. That afternoon, conference organizers asked Jessica to lead an impromptu workshop on personal safety and self-defense. She found herself teaching basic awareness techniques to a room full of businesswomen who had never considered that their professional travels might expose them to physical danger. The most important weapon you have is your mind, Jessica told the group. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't worry about being polite to someone who's making you uncomfortable. She demonstrated simple defensive techniques that didn't require extensive training. How to break free from wrist grabs, where to strike an attacker for maximum effect, how to use everyday objects as improvised weapons. Remember, Jessica emphasized, the goal isn't to win a fight. It's to create an opportunity to escape and get help. The workshop was recorded and later shared online, where it received hundreds of thousands of views from women who had faced similar situations. Comments poured in from viewers sharing their own stories of harassment and assault. Local news stations picked up the story of the Marine veteran who had stopped two attackers in a hotel elevator. Jessica initially declined interviews, preferring to maintain her privacy, but eventually agreed to appear on a morning show to discuss veteran employment and women's safety. "I didn't do anything special," she told the interviewer. "I used the training the Marine Corps gave me to protect myself." Every woman deserves to feel safe in professional settings. The incident had consequences beyond the immediate arrests. The pharmaceutical company fired Dave after learning about his pattern of inappropriate behavior. Mike's medical device company placed him on administrative leave pending their own investigation. The hotel implemented new security protocols, including additional cameras in elevators and increased patrols during conference events. They also began offering self-defense workshops for female guests upon request. 3 months later, Jessica received a letter from a young woman named Ashley who had attended the conference workshop. "Ms. Torres," the letter read, "I wanted to thank you for the techniques you taught us. Last week, a man followed me to my car in a parking garage and tried to force me into his vehicle. I used the palm strike you demonstrated and was able to get away safely. Your training probably saved my life." Jessica kept a letter in her desk at work, a reminder that her military service continued to have value in civilian life. The skills she'd learned to protect fellow Marines could also protect other women who found themselves in dangerous situations. She began volunteering with a local organization that taught self-defense to women and girls. Her military background gave her credibility with students who might otherwise dismiss self-defense training as unrealistic or overly aggressive. "Confidence is your first line of defense," she would tell each new class. "Predators look for victims who seem vulnerable or distracted. Carry yourself like someone who can handle trouble, and you're less likely to encounter it." The elevator incident became a teaching tool Jessica used to illustrate important principles about personal safety. How situational awareness could help. Identify potential threats. Why setting clear boundaries was crucial. When and how to escalate from verbal refusal to physical defense. "I didn't want to hurt those men," she would explain, "but I wouldn't let them hurt me either." Sometimes violence is the only language that certain people understand. Years later, Jessica's company promoted her to Director of Veteran Programs, partly because of the leadership she demonstrated during the crisis. Her story became part of their recruitment materials, showing potential employees that the company valued and supported veterans. The hotel where the incident occurred eventually named their women's safety program after Jessica, offering free self-defense classes to female guests and employees. A small plaque in the lobby reads, "Dedicated to all women who refuse to be victims." Dave and Mike both pleaded guilty to assault charges and received jail sentences plus mandatory counseling for sexual offenders. Neither returned to the conference circuit, their professional reputations destroyed by their actions that night. Jessica continued her civilian career in veteran services, helping other former military personnel transition to private sector jobs. But she never forgot the lesson from that hotel elevator, that the warrior mindset she developed in the Marines remained relevant in unexpected ways. The skills that had once protected her fellow soldiers in Afghanistan could also protect innocent women from predators in corporate America. It was a different kind of service, but service nonetheless. Some battles, she learned, never really end. They just moved to different battlefields.